Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, after the dozens of deaths during last week's violent demonstrations against the United Nations, the government of DR Congo says it will re-examine the withdrawal plan for the UN's MONUSCO mission. Popular frustrations may see the force exit earlier than expected. Also, the killing of al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri sparks questions about his succession. The Egyptian was targeted in a US airstrike, but his death is unlikely to have much impact on the swathe of affiliated terror groups across the Sahel. We hear from our regional correspondent. And a week away from presidential elections, and it's still set to be a tight race in Kenya. Faced with spiralling living costs, the economy and inflation are the top issues for most voters and are central to the campaign promises of the two frontrunners. But first, the UN's peacekeeping mission in DR Congo says that it supports the government's decision to reevaluate a withdrawal plan that originally had the MONUSCO mission staying on for at least 2 more years. But an outbreak of fatal protests against the force last week cost at least 36 lives, 4 of whom were peacekeepers. Tensions have been further stoked since 2 people were shot dead by peacekeepers near the border with Uganda on Sunday. Laurent Berstacker has more.
Sitting in hospital after being shot in the leg, this young man claims he was targeted by UN peacekeepers.
Ilikuwa mtu alikuwa anavala kilote ya jinsi na iko na army. Paske walikuwa nashuka magari, ilikuwa naandikwa ku UN. Na zile magari ilikuwa tunajua keni za MONUSCO.
On Sunday, a group of blue helmets opened fire at the Kasindi border post in eastern DRC, killing at least 3 people. The shooting, the motivations of which remain unclear, sparked anger and confusion across the country. UN officials strongly condemned the incident and said the perpetrators were placed under arrest, pending the results of an ongoing investigation. Congolese authorities, meanwhile, dispatched a military contingent to the area in order to reassure a population on edge.
Le gouvernement ne peut pas abandonner son peuple. C'est pour cela que je suis là avec vous et les autres, en attendant qu'on puisse suivre leurs soins.
Sunday's shooting was likely to add fuel to the fire in a context of growing tensions between MONUSCO and the Congolese population. A recent series of demonstrations have left dozens of people dead, with protesters denouncing the shortcomings of the UN mission and demanding its departure. On Monday, President Felix Tshisekedi called for an urgent meeting with MONUSCO representatives to re-evaluate the mission's withdrawal date.
The head of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was killed in a US drone strike on Sunday. The Egyptian was one of the plotters of the 9/11 attack and helped mastermind terror attacks on American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya in the late 1990s. Today, al-Qaeda remains a potent force in the Sahel, with several affiliate groups there. Al-Zawahiri's killing could lead to an increase of the importance of this front of global jihad. Sam Bradpeace brings us more from Dakar.
There is a degree of uncertainty as to who will replace Ayman al-Zawahiri as the global head of al-Qaeda. But some analysts are suggesting that perhaps the next leader of the terror organization could come from Nusrat al-Islam. That's the regional branch of al-Qaeda in the Sahel. Al-Qaeda itself has diminished in influence in the Middle East, certainly since the mid-2010s, perhaps due to the rise of other terror organizations such as ISIS. But in West Africa, thanks to Nusrat al-Islam, it's still going strong, particularly in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. Nusrat al-Islam is carrying out more terror attacks than at any point in its history, and in recent weeks has inched ever closer to the Malian capital, Bamako. Should the next global head of al-Qaeda come from West Africa, or from Nusrat al-Islam specifically, it would be a first, but it would also certainly be a reflection of growing instability in the Sahel region.
A former deputy leader of the Somali al-Shabaab extremist group has been made religious affairs minister in the country's new administration. Mukhtar Rabal once had a $5 million bounty on his head, but defected from the al-Qaeda-linked al-Shabaab in 2017. While some see his appointment as a demonstration to other extremists that violent lives can be left behind, some Somalis have slammed his new job, saying that it is disrespectful to the victims of al-Shabaab attacks. At least 24 people have been killed in floods in eastern Uganda. Torrential rains followed a prolonged drought in parts of the country. Waters rose to devastating levels in Bugusu, Mbale and Kapchorwa over the weekend, and authorities are still trying to get emergency relief through to the affected areas. Well, 1 week away from presidential elections, and Kenya's voters are paying closer attention than ever to what the frontrunners are saying about the economy. The pandemic and the war in Ukraine have tightened the squeeze on spending power, and one of the priorities of the country's next leader will have to be finding a way out of the crisis. Our team reports.
In this shop in Kibra, one of Nairobi's slums, prices of basic commodities have more than doubled.
Na maize flour mbili nisaidie na sukari.
For 1,000 Kenyan shillings, which is €9, she can only buy 4 kilograms of maize flour, 1 kilogram of sugar, and a liter of cooking oil. It is the largest note in the Kenyan currency.
Before I could buy rice, maize, oil, matchsticks, tissues. I've not bought those ones, you see. But right now, I can't go and shop with 1,000 bob. I have to prepare myself very well. At lunchtime, for me, I just had to cut it off to just minimize the expenses and everything.
According to the World Bank, 33% of Kenyans are living with less than €57 a month. In the campaign, all candidates promise to increase purchasing power, which has become a major concern countrywide as the election approaches.
Obviously, the political leaders must address this, because if it goes unchecked, then it can cause even public unrest as has happened in other countries.
Kenya, which has one of the strongest economies on the continent, has reached inflation of almost 8%, its highest level for 5 years.
It's a concoction of just bad things all coming together and meeting at a point where there is no food. Our government is broke. So again, the turnaround effect of even utilizing something like the emergency fund is very slow, because you have these huge obligations, 60, 70, almost 60, 65% of the money is being spent on debt.
As the election approaches, Kenyans are waiting for real solutions to end the crisis. The government has just reduced flour prices by subsidizing part of the cost. This aid will be cancelled in mid-August, just after the vote.
In Ivory Coast, in the run-up to the country's Independence Day of the 7th of August, the family of many political prisoners are hoping that President Alassane Ouattara might announce their release. For some, that would be a step in the right direction towards reconciliation, but the question remains a controversial one. Our team reports.
In her family home in Yopougon, Abidjan, Juliana has been waiting on her husband's return for 10 years. He was a member of former President Laurent Gbagbo's Special Forces and has been in prison since 2012.
It's been more than 10 years. I hope to see him again. That's what I pray for.
Juliana will never give up hope of seeing her husband again. On the 6th of July, President Alassane Ouattara met with his predecessors, Laurent Gbagbo and Henri Konan Bédier, an event that symbolized peace. Since then, many Ivorians have been waiting for a final gesture from their presidents on the issue of political prisoners. Many have already been released, but according to the opposition, 100 of them are still being detained.
Ivorians want reconciliation. We want to end the 2002 divide. Everything that reminds us of that must end. For this reason, we ask for the release of these prisoners.
amnesty to turn the page on years of crisis, an approach first taken by Ouattara in 2018 when he granted amnesty to 800 people accused or charged with crimes related to the 2010-2011 crisis. However, some organizations say reconciliation should not come at the expense of justice for victims.
We know that there's been a crisis since 2002. We know that the post-electoral crisis caused 3,000 deaths. But we don't know how all this happened. There must be justice. And that justice is very different from politics and politicians.
It's impossible to know if any releases will take place this year. But the ball is in the president's court. He will address the country on Independence Day on the 7th of August.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.